The streets of Munich in 1918 were cracked with tension. The war was over, but the wounds were fresh. Germany had lost more than just territory and pride. It had lost its identity. The Kaiser was gone. The monarchy collapsed. Chaos reigned. And in chaos, that's where cults can sometimes thrive. I'm Dan, and I'm your host to Portal to the Peculiar, the YouTube channel where we talk about creepy stories, strange paranormal activity, cryptids, and more. Portal to the Peculiar is also a podcast with two featured series, The Killer Show and Through Empty Eyes. The Killer Show delves into serial killers and spree murderers, and we discuss those kind of topics, while Through Empty Eyes focuses on more of the paranormal, creepy storytelling format. On this YouTube channel, you'll see clips and highlights from the podcast, and you'll also see special YouTube specific made video content like this right here, where I talk directly to you, and it kind of, yes, it is me reading from a teleprompter, sorry, but I'm getting better, hopefully. If I'm not, just comment down below. If I am, comment down below. But all that said, I would like you to know the content that I make is fun. It's made for you. So, likes and subscribes are greatly appreciated. I'm not monetized in any way. So this is just me literally making this for the fun of it, having content that I enjoy watching myself, and I'm kind of putting my own spin on it. Behind closed doors in a Bavarian beer hall, a name started to circulate among select few people. The Thule Society. To the untrained eye, it looked like another offshoot of the Germanic revival, one of many nationalist circles longing for a return to the idealized past. But Thule was something darker. It wasn't just about Germany, it wasn't even just about politics, it was about blood, magic, ancestry, and apparently destiny. They named themselves after Ultima Thule, a mythical northern land spoken of by ancient Greek and Roman scholars, believed to be the ancestral home of the pure, pre-Christian, godlike Aryan race. In Thule lore, this place was real, hidden near the Arctic, and the people who descended from it were destined to rule the earth once more, but only after purging it of the lesser elements. In other words, everyone else. The society was founded by a man named Rudolf von Sevendorf, and I'm going to say that name wrong. It's Sebentondorf, a mystic adventurer, a Freemason, deeply obsessed with Sufism, astrology, alchemy, and runic magic. His beliefs were a stew of Eastern mysticism and Germanic folklore, strange enough on their own, but when combined with racial superiority, conspiratorial anti-Semitism, and mythological nationalism, they became a doctrine that felt more like a spell. You see, Thule was exclusive. It was an exclusive membership almost, an invitation only, and each member had to prove their pure Aryan lineage back at least 3 generations. They performed rituals, studied ancient Nordic texts, and shared a collective prophecy that Germany's ruin was only temporary, and a new dawn was coming, one fueled not just by military strength, but by occult knowledge, forgotten power, and the return of a sacred race. Members wore rings carved with runic symbols, believed certain bloodlines could channel cosmic energy, and considered themselves the spiritual vanguard of the German Empire. Not just warriors, but priest kings of a coming apocalypse. And while this may all sound like madness now, it worked, because broken people are easy to lead, and monsters don't always appear as monsters at first. Sometimes they wear silk gloves, quote poetry, and light incense while they whisper about the blood in our veins. Within a year of its founding, the Thule Society had already begun reaching into politics. They funded propaganda newspapers, they plotted revolutions, they connected with ex-soldiers hungry for revenge and hungry for meaning, and they began recruiting. One man in particular, a man with a quiet rage and a gift for oration. And as you may have guessed, this man was named Adolf Hitler. But he comes in a little bit later on. For now, the doors of Thule's temple had just creaked open, and what lay behind them wasn't just nationalism, it was myth dressed in bone, waiting to be believed. If you peel back the surface of the Thule Society, what you found wasn't a political organization. It was a cult of mythology, and not mythology in the harmless bedtime story sense, Thule wasn't just reciting ancient tales. They believed deeply religiously, as if there was some kind of lost instruction manual for how the world should be. At the heart of all of this was the myth of the Ultima Thule, a land whispered about by Greek geographers and revived by German romantics. According to Thule doctrine, this frozen paradise somewhere beyond Scandinavia or possibly near the North Pole was the cradle of a godlike Aryan race. Not human in the way we understand it, but spiritually and physically superior, capable of feats that defied modern science, telepathy, pure energy, and divine rule. And the descendants of that race, they weren't extinct. Thule believed they still existed, diluted, scattered, but sleeping in the bloodlines of certain people. Pure bloodlines, Aryan bloodlines. And it was their destiny to awaken, rise, and take their place as rulers of the earth once again. This wasn't just about ancestry, it was about power. Thule taught that within the bloods of Aryans lay access to a lost force, an energy source called virile. They borrowed this concept from earlier occult fiction and theosophy, but if accessed properly, virile could give one the ability to control matter, to heal, or even dominate minds. They believed that ancient civilizations like Atlantis and later Thule harnessed virile through technology and ritual. Their ruins, lost beneath the earth or ice, might still hold the secrets of the energy, and Thule's followers saw it as their duty to rediscover and restore the ancient order. Their symbolism reflected those obsessions. Runes, swastikas, and sun wheels weren't just decorative, they were spiritual circuits, believed to attract and channel energy from the past. The swastika itself, long before the Nazis corrupted it into a symbol of hate, was a sacred solar emblem, one Thule believed had been passed down by the gods to mark the chosen race. They studied runology, astrology, numerology, and pagan cosmology. They performed rituals meant to awaken racial memory, to unlock ancestral knowledge coded into DNA. Some whispered that certain members attempted channeling rituals, attempting to contact beings from other planes, either ancient Aryan spirits or celestial guides from the stars. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their belief system wasn't what they worshipped, it was what they feared. You see, to Thule, other races were not just inferior, they were antithetical and they were out of the cosmic order. They believed that the mixing of blood, the loss of ancestral purity, was not just immoral, it was a spiritual contamination, a war against the divine blueprint. In their eyes, Jews, Slavs, and the Romani weren't just political scapegoats, they were viewed as a spiritual threat to Aryan ascension. And it was this poisonous blend, mythology, pseudoscience, and deep racial hatred that made the Thule Society not just strange, but truly dangerous. They weren't looking to win elections, they were preparing to cleanse the earth to bring about a new era of divine rule, led by those that saw the reincarnations of ancient gods. These myths weren't just stories to them, they were prophecy, and they were preparing to fulfill it with fire. For most secret societies, the ritual is the endpoint. The robe, the candle, the chant, it's all for show, a kind of spiritual theater to make its members feel like part of something greater. But it was different with the Thule Society. For Thule, the ritual was only the beginning. Their true ambition was political, not merely to influence Journey's future from behind the curtain, but to forge it into a weapon, one that would strike back at the modern world that they had believed betrayed them. And their method, infiltration. By 1919, the Thule Society was more than just a collection of mystics and racially obsessed dreamers. It had become a conduit for a political movement, one that would eventually birth one of the darkest regimes in human history. In that year, Thule members funded to help organize the German Workers' Party, or the DAP, a tiny radical group formed in the wreckage of post-war Germany. Their platform was a Frankenstein of ideas: anti-Semitism, anti-communism, anti-capitalism, and national rebirth through racial purity. They printed pamphlets, handed out leaflets, and held raucous speeches in Munich beer halls, just hoping to spark something from someone. And then, as luck would have it, Adolf Hitler walked through the door. At the time, he was an aimless ex-soldier and government informant, sent to observe the party, but he stayed. Something in their message spoke to him and his fury inside. His rhetoric, his magneticism, his fanatical belief spoke to them. And so he was mentored by Dietrich Eckart, a senior member of the Thule Society. Eckart was more than just a political ally. He saw himself as a spiritual guidance, the modern-day vigil leading Hitler through the fires of Germany's rebirth. He introduced Hitler to occult philosophies, nationalist mythologies, and the idea that he might be something more than just a man. He might just be a chosen figure, perhaps a messiah for the entire Aryan race. Eckart's influence ran deep. Before his death in 1923, he allegedly wrote, "Follow Hitler, he will will dance, but it is I who have called the tune. Other Thule-connected figures soon surrounded Hitler's early movement. Rudolf Hess, who would become Deputy Führer, Hans Frank, future Governor General of occupied Poland, and Heinrich Himmler, though not a direct member of Thule, would observe many of its occult beliefs into the rituals of the SS. These names should be familiar with you if you follow World War II. The German Workers' Party soon transformed, renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party the Nazi Party, with Thule's ideology bleeding into its veins. It became a movement not just of flags and speeches, but of mystic destiny, racial cleansing, and national resurrection. Meanwhile, the Thule Society kept funding newspapers, promoting conspiracies, and whispering in the ears of men who would become executioners on a continental scale. Their ideas, once contained in candlelit salons, were now being shouted from podiums, backed by armies, and written into German law. By the time the charismatic Hitler seized full control in 1933, Thule's name had largely faded from public view. But that was never the point. The society had always succeeded. Their vision had taken root. The cult had become the state itself. And the world was about to learn what happened when a secret society's apocalyptic mythology was given tanks, uniforms, and death camps. You see, the Thule Society didn't just see itself as political, not truly. They were priests, after all, keepers of a sacred bloodline, midwives to a coming rebirth. And like any priesthood, they had rituals. Behind the wood-paneled walls of the Munich headquarters, an old hotel called the Four Seasons, Thule members performed ceremonies, acts of spiritual warfare. Initiation rites required proof of Aryan ancestry, of course, but beyond the bloodlines came the symbolism. New members swore oaths beneath black sun emblems, surrounded by ancient runes and sigils drawn from Norse and Indo-European mythology. They recited passages in an archaic German dialect, invoked the names of forgotten gods, and performed meditations meant to awaken the ancestral memory, a kind of spiritual regression to a purer ancient self. They believed that within the Aryan soul was a sleeping force, a divine echo of the Thulean ancestors, which could be summoned through ritual. These weren't harmless historical indulgences. They were attempts to reactivate a god race, to open the psychic pathways of the blood. The symbolism they used was anything but random. The swastika, long a sacred symbol of sun and rebirth, became their emblem for divine order. The black sun, a circular pattern of radial sigils, represented the hidden energy of the earth, a force they believed would awaken in the Aryan elite. Their rooms were lit by iron torch sconces, lined with tomes on Atlantis, rune casting, and the virile force, the mysterious life energy they sought to control. There are scattered reports, mostly second-hand, whispered after the fall of the Reich that some Thule circles experimented with blood rituals. These rumors suggest that initiates may have cut themselves or others during certain ceremonies, using blood as a medium to bind oaths and activate spiritual power. Some go further and allege that even darker practices, such as human sacrifice, offerings to awaken the gods in the north, but these claims are still highly debated and buried in wartime propaganda and destroyed documents. What is known is that Thule's obsession with the ritual didn't die when the society faded from view. Many of their core beliefs were absorbed by Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, who transformed his own paramilitary group into a quasi-religious order. At Wellersberg Castle, Himmler oversaw the construction of a massive ritual chamber beneath the West Tower, an occult sanctum dedicated to the rebirth of the Germanic spirit. Its black sun mosaic, strikingly similar to Thule's, remains carved into the floor to this day. SS officers were given ceremonial daggers. Wedding ceremonies were rewritten with runic blessings, and elite members were taught that they were modern knights, descendants of an ancient brotherhood. It was Thule's doctrine, just militarized. Ritual wrapped in steel. Even Hitler himself, while more cynical about the occult, understood its power. He allowed the symbolism to flourish around him, because belief is a weapon, and mythology, when properly sharpened, can cut deeper than truth. So while the world was watching Germany's tanks roll through Europe, behind closed doors, another war was being waged. The war of blood, will, and the spiritual conquest, carried out not just in battlefields, but in stone chambers, candlelit rituals, and whispered invocations to the dead god race. And I guess the scariest part, they believed that this was all working. By the mid-1930s, the Thule Society's name had largely vanished. There were no more public meetings, no more published newsletters or grand pronouncements. The Four Seasons Hotel in Munich no longer hosted secret ceremonies. On paper, the group had dissolved, disbanded, gone forever. But nothing in the world of secret societies ever really disappears. Because the Thule Society didn't die, it metastasized. Once the Nazi party seized control, Thule's more mystical language was scrubbed from official speeches, but its ideology lived on, quietly woven into the rituals, architecture, and institution of the Third Reich. With many of Thule's senior members had now been absorbed into the Nazi government, others filtered into the SS and intelligence services. Their beliefs, once whispered in candlelit rituals, now shape in policy, military expansion, and even pseudoscientific experiments. The occult obsession didn't just go away, it just simply shifted homes. Groups like the Anarchy, Himmler's pet project with the SS, took over when Thule left off, conducting archaeological digs in Tibet, hunting for Atlantis, and hunting for Norse runes, and even pursuing psychic warfare. Their mission was to prove that the Aryan race was not just dominant, but divinely ordained. And yet, even as Thule's ideas spread like dark ink through the veins of the Nazi machine, the society itself became a liability. Hitler, ever suspicious, distrusted anyone with a competing power base. The occult beliefs were useful to him, yes, but only when they served the party. Those who clung too openly to Thule's mysticism were quietly removed, pushed out of power, or absorbed under tighter, more militarized control. As the war dragged on and the Reich began to crumble, so did the veil of power for Thule's legacy. When the Allies closed in, documents were burned, records were erased, and ritual chambers were sealed or destroyed. Wilsberg's castle was partially demolished by the SS before it could be captured. Its black sun floor was left intact, but much of its purpose was buried. After the war, Allied forces found fragments, bits of correspondence, books of runes and virile energy, floor plans for ritual spaces, but nothing complete. Nothing that could prove the full extent of what Thule had actually planned for their spiritual successors. And in the absence, conspiracy was born. Some claimed Thule had gone underground, rebranding under new names, infiltrating post-war governments, or even fleeing to Antarctica, where a Nazi base was rumored to operate, while others believed the society had tapped into a supernatural technology that the virile force had led them to, using Nazi UFO experiments. The remnants of this knowledge were hidden from the public. Most of these claims are of course speculative at best, but in the world of the occult, what matters isn't what's true, it's what feels true. What lingers, what haunts, what stays with us. And what lingers about the Thule Society is this: they started with mythology, they moved into politics, and then into power. The group may have collapsed, its name buried under the rubble of Berlin, but its influence lived on in the blood-soaked ideals of the regime it helped birth, and in the paranoid shadows of every conspiracy that followed. Because when you burn the evidence, you don't erase the past. You just invite it to become legend. When history runs out of pages, conspiracy theories start to write themselves. By the time World War II ended and the Third Reich lay in smoldering ruin, the Thule Society had all but vanished. There were no more rosters, no more rituals, no one claimed membership, no one even whispered the name aloud. But that silence, it only made the myth louder. Because if the Thule Society had disappeared, why did their symbols keep resurfacing? Why were there post-war reports of black sun insignias, ritual chambers, and strange technologies hidden in Nazi strongholds? And why did so many people, scientists, intelligence agents, even soldiers, swear they'd seen things that defied explanation? One of the most enduring legends is that the Thule Society never dissolved at all, that if Berlin fell, a select group of Thule initiates escaped. South America, for example, Antarctica, or even America. According to this theory, the Nazis had been preparing for their defeat long before the war, and in the late 1930s, Germany had conducted several expeditions to Antarctica, claiming a section of land called, and I'm going to try this my best, Nautschwabenland. Officially, it was about whaling rights and scientific research. Unofficially, the rumors say they were building an underground base fueled by Thule's occult and powered by virile energy, the same force that they believed drove the gods of Atlantis. This hidden base, some claim, became a sanctuary for the society's most elite members and their secret research. Over time, the legend morphed into something even stranger, that in Antarctica, the Thule Society developed anti-gravity craft or disc-shaped flying machines, what we now would think of commonly as UFOs. Witnesses described blueprints recovered after the war, saucer-like vehicles with swastikas designed for vertical flight. The Allies allegedly scrambled to seize this technology, giving rise to both the Nazi UFO myth and the early Cold War aerospace programs. Then there are, of course, the many sightings. In the 1950s, multiple reports emerged that UFOs over the Arctic and Antarctic, sometimes described as moving at impossible speeds or disappearing into the ice. Some conspiracy theorists believe that these weren't just alien spacecraft, but remnants of Thule's new science, still in motion decades after the Reich had fallen. Others, of course, pushed the theory even further that Thule had discovered the key to extending life, perhaps even finding the key to immortality, that their elite members, through ritual or technology, had slowed their aging. In fringe circles, whispers persist that the true Thule masters are still alive, guiding world events in secret, waiting for humanity to collapse so they can rise again. The Black Sun, once a forgotten sigil buried in the castle floor, had become a symbol for neo-occultists, modern esoteric fascists, and underground orders that claim lineage to Thule. Some groups today, especially on the farthest edges of the internet, claim that they are awakened Aryan spirit, reviving Thulean doctrine under new names with new targets. They gather online, they sell books, they publish manifestos, and in quiet corners of the modern world, they still speak of Ultima Thule, because some societies don't need a headquarters or a formal membership list. Some societies survive in symbols or stories and in the minds of those waiting for the world to burn so that theirs can rise. Maybe the craziest thing about the Thule Society isn't just what they believed, it's what they set in motion. This wasn't just a secret society tucked away in the shadows of post-war Europe. Thule was the cradle of an ideology that grew teeth, drew blood, and dragged the world into one of the darkest chapters in human history. Their symbols became emblems of a genocidal regime. Their myths became political doctrine. Their obsessions with blood purity and lost powers, they were engraved into policy, education, war, and death. What began with incense and chants ended in gas chambers and ashes. What if their true power was this? They showed the world that a lie told with conviction, draped in ancient language and wrapped in ritual, can become a religion, and that religion, once weaponized, can burn the world. So we end not with answers, but I guess with more warnings. Look careful at what people believe. Look closer at what they want to believe, because sometimes the scariest monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. They're building altars in plain sight. I'm Dan, and thank you for watching Portal to Peculiar. This is a special YouTube video presentation. I'll be doing clips of this as well for anyone who wants to watch clips on the social pages, behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. I do hope you like this one. This was fun to research. I know I didn't talk a lot about, Hitler and Nazis specifically, but I know whenever you do talk about stuff like that, people get a little bit kind of triggered already. So I thought I'd start the video with there. But really, I didn't talk about him too much. It wasn't about him. It was about the secret society aspect of it, because a lot of people love following secret societies, but they have no idea that Thule Society ever existed. So I wanted to bring this one to you because it's quite fascinating for me, and I hope you guys got something out of this as well. This is the stuff from movies. This is the stuff that I have seen kind of like spoken about in movies where they involve, Nazis and German soldiers in World War II looking for things like, think Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, for example. They're always hunting for some kind of mystical thing that's going to give them an edge, and that's what I kind of got out of this as well. So thank you for watching Portal to Peculiar. Obviously, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you made it all the way to the end, we have got the Instagram, the TikTok for clips, highlights. We have also got the Spotify podcast where we do podcast episodes, and we have, this here, which has been a bit of a longer video than I thought it would be, but it was great fun in the end there, and I really tried to keep on track and not get sidetracked as I have done in the past. So again, thank you for watching Portal to Peculiar, Team Wolf production. I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Dan out.
Portal to the Peculiar is a Team Wolf production.